Okay, meeting being recorded. Okay, you guys can all hear me all right? Yeah? Okay, great. So I'll be walking you through Adobe Illustrator because you're going to be using it to do your assignment one. So what I've done here is I've taken your assignment one assignment brief, and I've just like looked at exactly what you need to do, exactly what Nadia and Afshin are asking for. Make sure you too also look through in exact detail what they're looking for. Kind of use this assignment brief as a checklist for your submission. And don't forget, when you submit your assignment, make sure it's the right size, make sure it's not too large, make sure it's less than 20 megabytes, and also make sure you name your file correctly. It's just so much easier for us to mark if everything's organized and named correctly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through Adobe Illustrator. I know a lot of you guys have used Illustrator in the past, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what it is and contrast it to things like Photoshop and InDesign. So Illustrator is great because it's a vector-based tool, which means it uses math and points and lines so that you can rescale any element you have in Illustrator to be any size, as is shown here. The E in a vector-based graphic, you can scale up and it looks clean still. Meanwhile, if you use something like a raster-based graphic, which is what Photoshop is largely used for, think of like photographs. Each photograph is made up of individual pixels, right? So, and that's called raster-based graphics. So if you scale up a raster-based graphic, it looks pixelated, right? Because there's only so many pixels, so many data points that you can actually scale up. So the beauty of using Illustrator is that it's vector-based graphics and your drawings done in vectors scale much easier. Okay, so Kara is going to be walking you through Photoshop in the future, and I'm sure you guys will be using InDesign if you haven't already for things like multi-page layout and all that. Okay, so that's why we use Illustrator anyway, vector-based graphics. So while we're doing, as I'm showing you this, let's get this document set up in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and open Illustrator. Let's hit New File. In your assignment, it requires you to be producing a drawing or multiple drawings on pages that are 11 by 17 inches. So let's choose that size, 11 by 17 inches in landscape orientation for now. Create. Okay, here we are. And as you'll notice, we're now in Illustrator, and this sheet, this white piece of paper basically we have is at a scale at 11 by 17 dimensions. And this white piece of paper here is called an artboard. So in Illustrator, you can actually manage multiple artboards. I just zoomed out with my keyboard using Control- on my keyboard. You can also use the zoom features in the sidebar here. But what essentially I'm trying to do here is show you that in Illustrator, you can manage multiple artboards. And you can access the artboard tool and everything by this button here on the left. If you can see my mouse, really small button here, it's the artboard tool. You click that and you can start to access all these artboards. I'll show you right now how to duplicate them. So as you can see, the artboard is selected. You can copy it using Control-C or Command-C on a Mac and pasting it so you have two artboards. For now, I'll just have one artboard that we'll be working off of. And as we get into the second part of assignment one, I'll be showing you how to use artboards in a little bit more detail there. Okay, so next thing I want to be talking to you about is bringing in and scaling up your image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Finder or Explorer. I'm going to find the image. I have it right here. As you can see, this is the base image of the park. I'm just going to drag and drop it into my Adobe Illustrator file. Now it's here. It's as simple as that. That's how you get your image into your file. I'm going to use the Control+ button now to zoom in a little bit. So I'm a little bit closer to it in the artboard. I'm going to just zoom out a tiny bit more using the command minus keys on my keyboard. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the scale. So as you know, we created the document in inches, right? 11 by 17. But my scale here is in meters. So what I want to show you how to do now is convert the document units to metric. So let's go to File, Document Setup. And as you can see, the units here in inches, let's change it to centimeters. So it's in metric. Let's forget about everything else here for now. As you use Illustrator more in your careers and in your studies, you'll become more accustomed to everything else that the program offers, but let's keep it simple for now. Okay, so now we're in units, centimeters, and let's double check what scale our drawing is, and let's also make sure it's to the right scale. So we just had a really quick talk on scale, and as you can see, like the example Nadia gave, we have a little box here that says 3 meters. Now, how do we get from 3 meters to whatever scale we think it is here? Well, I put together just a little flow chart to think about all this. In Miro, the assignment asks for the drawing at a 1 to 200 scale. So how do we get from a 3 meter box to a 1 to 200 scale? I always like to think about this a little bit because these numbers are a little bit confusing at first. You get more used to it as you become accustomed to using and manipulating scales. But let's just go through really quickly how to think about a 3 meters line at a 1 to 200 scale. Let's break it down, make it really simple. At a 1 to 100 meter scale, 1 centimeter basically equals 100 centimeters, right? That's kind of obvious. To get to 1 to 200 scale, we need to half that scale. The bigger the number on the right, the smaller the scale is of your drawing, right? So half of a 1 to 100 meter scale, you actually get a 0.5 centimeters equals 100 centimeters, right? Because you half the first number, which is 1 centimeter, you get 0.5 centimeters. Now, to get to 3 meters or 300 centimeters, we basically need to triple that first number, right? Because we're tripling that second number. So tripling it, we get 1.5 centimeters. That gives us the 1 to 200 scale for a distance of 3 meters. So now, does that make sense? It'll make even more sense when I go into Illustrator and draw my line on the 3 meter scale here. So now I want to validate that this drawing is a 1 to 200 scale. I'm going to choose the line segment tool on the right here. I'm just going to click once. And I know at 1 to 200, the distance of 3 meters is 1.5 centimeters. So I'm just going to type that in. 1.5 centimeters. My units are in centimeters in this document, and I hit enter. Actually, before I hit enter, I'm going to change the angle to 0. And I'm going to hit OK. So what I have now is a line that is 1.5 centimeters long. And if I look at that line here, it's almost the same distance as the 3 meter line here. So what that means is this drawing is slightly large. So I'm just going to change the color of my line so it's a little bit more obvious, and I'm going to increase the stroke width. Stroke means like the width of the line, basically. The stroke is the line that you've just drawn here, so I can see it, and I'm just going to scale down my drawing slightly so it fits that line. And as you can see, if I click the top right corner of my drawing, I can manipulate the height and the width freely, and you don't really want to do that with your drawings because everything has a fixed ratio of width to height, right? So when I click and scale my drawing, I'm going to hold down Shift. And what that does is it scales up and down my drawing with fixed ratios for the height and the width. I'll show you what else Shift can do as we're drawing elements like circles and boxes and lines throughout the rest of the tutorial. But for now, definitely use Shift to scale up any base maps you might have. Okay, so there we go. Our drawing is now to scale. And now one other cautionary note I wanted to mention about all of this is when you print documents and when you manipulate documents in Illustrator, there is a little bit of a discrepancy since sometimes your drawings are scaled down a little bit to fit on a piece of paper. So if you are asked to print things, make sure you double check your scales after you print them, especially if you're manipulating them digitally like I just did. Okay, so now we know our drawing is at a 1 to 200 meter scale. What else to do with Illustrator to keep your files organized is I would use the layer tool. So I'm just gonna move these panels on the right into my view a little bit more. And I'm gonna show you how to use layers in Illustrator. You know, and the assignment asks for layers too. Make sure you use layers in your drawing here. So let's create a new layer. And let's call this layer base map. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my layer, move my base map here from layer 1 into my base map. So I see this little blue icon on the right here beside my layer. I'm just going to click and drag that up into the blank space in base map. And it changes the selected color to red now. And the color of this layer is red. So that's how I know I just moved this object into my base map. And then what also layers helps you do is organize your objects in each layer by, you know, if you want to put something on top, you should have it on the topmost layer. So for example, I'm just going to bring base map to the bottom so that my scale line reappears. Okay, I'm going to rename layer 1 to scale. And I'm going to now start to draw a scale for this drawing here. Okay, so let's start drawing the scale using the rectangle tool. What I want to do is, and let me just go into Miro and show you the types of scales that I want to be producing. You know, in the examples you had in your assignment brief, you know, Nadia included assignments that had scales. So I'm going to try and produce a scale that looks like this. So I'm going to draw a rectangle that's about 3 meters wide. Make sure it's the right width. Okay, there's my 3 meter wide rectangle. I'm going to change it back to black. So as you can see, you know, you can manipulate the colors of the stroke and the colors of the fill of this object in the toolbar above here. I'm going to change my stroke to 1 for now. Actually, I'm going to change it to 0 for now. I don't want it messing with my scale too much. And then I'm going to copy and paste this rectangle multiple times so that I can produce a scale bar like we just showed you. And to do that, I'm going to hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC. And as you can see how my mouse cursor changed? It goes from a single arrow to a double arrow. So that means I'm able to duplicate the object if I hold down Alt. So I click and drag while I hold down Alt, which lets me duplicate the object. Okay, so now I have the bars for my scale. I want the text now. I'm going to click the type tool here, which is also accessed through the short command T. So if I just type in T on my keyboard, I get the type tool. I make a click and I can just type in the first number of the scale here, which is 0, of course, and then I'm done. So to get out of this type tool, I hit escape. And I'm going to drag the 0 up to the top here. So that's the first number in my scale bar. I'm going to hold down Alt, drag, and drop the 0. So I get, of course, I duplicated it, and I'm just going to change this to a 3. hit escape to get out of the type tool. I'm going to do it again, hold down Alt, make it a 6, right? I'm going to do that one more time to get the final number at the end, which of course is 9. Hold down Alt, duplicate this number here, and change it to 9. Okay, so that makes sense, right? Each of these lines is 3 meters. You have 3 of them in total, which gives you a total of 9 meters. And now, just to be even more precise, I'm just going to put in meters on the scale bar here. Okay, I'm also going to just select everything here and see when you select your elements, it actually selected things on multiple layers. So you see that I have something in red selected in the back. To get rid of it in the selection, hold down Shift and click on what you want to get rid of, and it gets rid of that in the selection. I'm going to right click it and hit Group. So all these elements are grouped together. Now, if you want to edit an element in a group, you have to double click the group to get access to all of those elements within the group. I'm going to, under this scale, just type in 1 to 200, since that's what my scale is here. And to make it look a little bit nicer, you can change the fonts if you want. I always like to use Helvetica just because it's really simple, but you can use whatever font you want. Make sure when you use fonts in your drawings that they complement the drawing and they don't distract you or take away from the drawing. And then the other thing I like to do is make sure my fonts are smaller for that reason too, because I don't want them to compete with the elements in my drawing. So I'm just going to leave it at that size for now. And I'm going to group all these things here. Group. Oh, they were already grouped. That's great. And I got out of isolation mode. Remember, because these are all grouped, and I double click in, that gets me into isolation mode, which lets me edit things in the group. To get out of that, I just hit escape. So as you can see now, I have 2 layers. In one layer I have scale, and in the other layer I have the base map. Okay, so let's create one more thing. Let's create the north arrow. So I'm showing you all these these tools in Illustrator, which let me create different elements. And a lot of the shape tools are embedded in the same button here on the left. So as you can see, I created rectangles. If I click it and hold it, I get access to different shapes I can create. You can have rectangles, you can have circles, polygons, stars, lines. For this, let's use the ellipse tool. And now I'm going to trace the north arrow, because on all of your plan drawings, you have to make sure you have a scale and, of course, a north arrow. Never forget that. I still get assignments submitted from 4th year BLAs, and some of them are forgetting the scale bar on the north arrow, and where you have to automatically dock marks, because this is just like elementary. Just have a north arrow and have a scale bar in all of your drawings, your plan drawings. Okay, so if you remember when I scaled up my image, I had to hold down Shift to control the height and width dimensions. And as I'm clicking and dragging this circle, I'm able to create an ellipsoid shape kind of freely. So if I hold down Shift, that controls and has a fixed height and width. So I can make a circle that's a perfect circle, which is exactly what I want. And I'm going to just move the circle where I want it to be. I'm going to make the fill of the circle transparent, and I'm going to make the outline black, and I'm going to make it a single point wide. So that gives me the outline of my north arrow. I'm going to choose the line segment tool. In the toolbar on the left, I'm going to click down and basically exactly draw the line that indicates north. And that's it. That's your north arrow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to group these guys too. So select both of them. And as you can see, I selected one object, and to select a second object, it gets rid of the first object I selected. So to multi-select objects, you have to hold down Shift. That lets you select both objects. So when you're using Illustrator, keys like Shift and Command or Control and Alt, as you can see, are very useful tools. So don't be afraid of playing with those keys as you're using the software just to get more used to the abilities of the software. Okay, anyway, right click the two objects I have selected and hit group. Okay, and let's add these guys to a new layer. So I hit create new layer button in the bottom right hand corner. I change the layer name of the new layer to north arrow. And I select the red little dot here, red little square here in the base map, which, you know, when I do that, select it and drag it up to north arrow, the selected objects I have in the actual drawing will move up to that layer. So there you go. Now, if I turn off the base map, you know, if I click this eye tool, this eye icon here, it'll turn the base map off. And because north arrow and scale are on different layers, they remain visible on the screen. Okay, so that's that. Now you know how to create, you know how to trace the north arrow, you know how to draw scale, and you know how to make sure your drawing is to scale. So I'm going to proceed by showing you how to trace now the different elements in this drawing. But before I do that, I just wanted to check in to see if there's any questions on anything that wasn't totally clear in what I've showed you so far.